Well, we are already getting ready for Men Talk in less than 1 minute's time.
You need to tell somebody right now, it's your time, yeah, yeah, yeah. Stepping up a new season, we got a reason just to lift my voice and to sing and stand. Got no pain and sorrow, so be ready for tomorrow, cause it all run me down. Step up with faith so great, cause God gave me a new song, yeah. Say me ready, 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 yes, I'll praise you, cause you've been so intentional, Lord, yeah. Just because you've been so good, say hallelujah, yeah, hallelujah, yeah, hallelujah, yeah, hallelujah, yeah, sing hallelujah, yeah, 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 yeah. Mr. Pope, big and bold.
Thank you so much, Owen Gardner. Sorry I can't have you sing the entire song. It's time for Men Talk on Isaac 90.1 FM. And Men Talk is brought to you courtesy Ayana Reflexology Health and Wellness Clinic. Yeah, she's our sponsor. So we say thank you so much to Ayana too. Time to get into Men Talk. They say that men don't talk, but they are so wrong. Join me, Noel Professor Richards, and my co-host Huey Coffey every Monday at 6:30 p.m. for Men Talk. We talk about how to live, how to love, and how to lead. So join with us as we talk about everything that men talk about on Men Talk. Mondays 6:30 p.m. on Isaac 98.1 FM, The Promise.
You can now see the Men Talk team live on Facebook at Isaac the Promise and YouTube on FBN TV. Sponsored by Dr. Anaya Tony, the Feet Lady at Anaya Health and Wellness Center. Call 360-5166 or 478-7416.
Last week on Men Talk, we spoke about andropause and the challenges that some men face.
That man could be aroused, but he may not have a sustained arousal.
Our guest was Dr. Oscar Ocho, and he held nothing back.
When a woman or a wife says to her husband, "You finish yet?" Oh God, don't listen, finish quick now.
Join me, Noel Professor Richards, my co-host Huey Coffey, George, and our returning guest, Dr. Ocho, as we continue the conversation on Men Talk, Monday, August 9th at 6:30 p.m. Men, you need to hear this. Women, you need to hear it too. It's Men Talk on Isaac 98.1 FM, The Promise. Well, welcome to Men Talk on Isaac 98.1 FM, The Promise. And just in case you're new to the station, new to the segment, maybe you're traveling in a maxi or in a friend's car, in a taxi, something that you hear in this program for the first time. What is it about? Well, it's about men talking. It's about creating that space and that time for men to get together and talk about the things that men talk about, the things that concern us, the things that sometimes confuse us, the things that would, hopefully help us to be better men. So we talk, and we talk, and we talk. For 1 hour, we talk. If you're a lady and listening for the first time or hear this, the program is an interactive program where you, the listener, or the listeners get an opportunity to call in, share their views, or ask their questions. And that happens, somewhere along the line. When that happens today and any other day on Men Talk, we ask you ladies, please don't call. All right? The reason why we ask you not to call is because the program is Men Talk. It's to encourage men to talk. And we have found, history has shown that when the ladies start talking, the men keep quiet, they don't talk. And we want the men to talk. So we have created this time just for the men. Ladies, however, we know that you have a lot to contribute, because I know there's some ladies who tell me, Pro, you see that what they were saying there, but that wasn't so, that is not like that. And ladies have so much to contribute, sometimes to contradict what we are saying, sometimes they have a question, and they don't get an opportunity because we don't allow them to call in. Well, ladies, you do have an opportunity to be a part of the program. You can send us a WhatsApp message. That's a text message, not a voice note, because you'll still be talking. And you can take the number down straight away, 275-1981. That's for you ladies, 275-1981. That's your number where you will call, make your comments, ask your questions. So thank you, ladies. We very much love for you to be a part of the program. And the men, well, we really want you to call in and ask your questions and make your comments. So I will give you that number in a short while. because we are not opening up the lines yet. Ladies, you can send in your messages from the start of the program. Anytime during the program, you could send in your text messages, and we will address them at the appropriate time. So today we continue a conversation we started last Monday on andropause. Andropause, which is the male version of menopause, and most people know about menopause or menstruation pause. I think it is supposed to be at that point in time where a lady stops menstruating when she goes through certain physical and emotional changes in her life, and we know about that because some of us have, let me put it in quotes, suffered through that. Either our mothers or sisters or wives, and so we know about that. We have experienced it too, or the effects of it as men. But what is little known about is andropause, which men go through, and not everybody knows or understands it. And so we've had our returning guest today, Dr. Oscar Ocho, who has helped us to understand it a little bit last week. And we want to continue the discussion because when we ended last week, we were still getting calls and we still had some WhatsApp messages that we weren't able to address. So we're going to continue today. Just to let you know as well, co-host Huey Coffey is not here today again. We do have George on the line. In fact, let me just say hello to George. George, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Professor. Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. It is a pleasure to be here this evening.
Wonderful.
I wasn't here last week, but I look forward to this one.
Wonderful. Great. And let's welcome our guest back, Dr. Oscar Ocho. Good evening to you, Doc. Doc, you're still muted, Doc. You're still muted.
My profuse apologies. Good evening to you, Professor, and to George. And listening audience, it really was a pleasure being with you last week, and I look forward to the continuation of the conversation.
Yes, you had some people blushing last week, so but that's good. That is good. It's about time we talk about some of these things publicly because they happen privately, and nobody knows and nobody's helped if you can't expose these things. So we were talking about andropause, and it's a time, in fact, let me not try and define it. I want you to redefine what andropause is for those who may have missed it last week.
Right. Thanks so much, Professor. So andropause really is a period in the life of a male where his hormonal level, the testosterone level, gradually descends to the point where it ceases its level of production and it manifests itself in certain psychological and physiological changes.
So that's the definition of andropause, and we talked about some of the ways that it manifests itself last week. One of the things you mentioned last week, Doc, is that it is also associated, it's not the same thing, but it's associated with midlife crisis. Yes. So can we start at that point? What exactly is midlife crisis, and what are some of the manifestations or the symptoms of that?
Good. This is an excellent point of departure into the continuation of this conversation. Now, a midlife crisis is a period experienced by both males and females, but for the most part, let's talk about it within the context of the male, where he is experiencing some critical decisions about his life, his usefulness, his worthiness, and his sense of achievement and purpose. And it usually occurs around midlife, and let's say around middle 40s, early to middle 40s, into the mid 50s. And a person who experiences the crisis questions their own mortality, questions their own sense of accomplishment and achievement, questions their own sense of usefulness. And as a result, such an individual begins to contend with their own selves and their bodily changes. They begin to lose a sense of willingness to become involved in the things that they once enjoyed. For example, they would have played sports, or they would have loved going fishing or going to the beach. And that sense of questioning about life and its own usefulness and purposefulness, where they question their sense of achievement and their own worthiness, it begins to have such a serious psychological impact on their lives that they no longer have the same level of enjoyment that they once had. And this sometimes could also be associated with the fact that they are now going through some physical changes, which again will further exacerbate this sense of lostness.
So you're saying, Doc, that someone can go through midlife crisis even without the physical changes? Are you saying that there comes a point in life where you go through that, even though you may still be functioning normally physically?
Yes, and that is so. And that's why it's considered a midlife crisis, and it's not linked directly to andropause. You think about some men when they start thinking about approaching retirement, especially if they would not have to themselves achieved the level of economic wherewithal that they would have wanted in their own lives. They may still be renting. There may be expectations that the children may have, and they may have of themselves, that they would have wanted to achieve certain things at this particular point in time in their lives. Having not achieved it, that sense of worthlessness and unworthiness and lack of achievement and accomplishment could have a severe, serious, debilitating psychological impact on their well-being. Yes.
Now, is that something that all men go through, or most men go through, or are there those who would skip that, in their life's journey? Or is it something that is expected, that we have to deal with at some point in time?
And the answer to that is that all men do not have to go through this. In fact, many men do not go through the midlife crisis, because again, it all depends on one's own sense of mental well-being. And I want to stress that, because you do know that andropause as well as midlife crisis has a serious psychological impact on individuals. So if I am satisfied with who I am, and I understand the fact that aging brings with it its own challenges and limitations, then of course that in and of itself serves as a panacea to help me to be able to cope with whatever changes life will present at this particular time. So not every male will go through a midlife crisis.
6:43 is the time. You're listening to Men Talk on Isaac 90.1 FM. Our guest today, Dr. Oscar Ocho, and we're talking about andropause, taking up where we left off last week, Monday. And Doc, so then it's a double whammy when someone is going through both midlife crisis and andropause at the same time, Because here you are, dealing with all these struggles, mental struggles, and then, you add to that the physical manifestations of andropause, and that's enough to kill a man.
Well, of course, you see, and it's very, very important for us in conceptualizing and understanding this thing that we call menopause. It's similar to what women go through, menopause. With women go through with menopause, men go through that emotional roller coaster with the andropause. Because here it is, my sense of manhood, what I am associating with being a man, comes face to face to confront me and my own sense of power when it comes to sexual potency. Hence, you would find a lot of men, even Christian men, they know that they are going down in age, but they still want to maintain that sense of power. So aphrodisiacs, the whole issue of using prescribed medications like Viagra, which, as it were, understanding the physiological impact that chronic diseases will be having on us as we grow older, because we have an increased risk. That in and of itself creates a significant impact on how we define ourselves as men. But you also have to contend with this in and of itself brings things like forgetfulness. So I have to be conscious. Will people be laughing at me? Can I be able to speak to my colleagues and my male friends, in a non-threatening way, and get the kind of psychological support where I could be assured that, yes, I know that changes are taking place physiologically and mentally, but that doesn't make me less of a man. These are very, very, very important issues that we need men to talk about. But you know what makes it so challenging, Professor and George, is that under normal circumstances, we talk stupidness, as we would say. We like small talk. But when it comes to the deep, personal, invasive, sensitive issues that affects our well-being, we don't want people to know that we have concerns. We don't want people to know that we have fears. We don't want people to know that we have challenges. And it's only when, as we would say, water is more than flour, we try to reach out for help. And sometimes the horse has already bolted from the stable.
And the thing is that, Doc, I mean, I could understand if a man may not want a woman or other women to know. But your own friends too, men as well, you don't want them to know that you're going through this thing. Why are we like that as men? Because women get together and they talk. Because women, as some psychologists will tell you, women are wired to talk. Women use many more words than men would. But as part of our socialization, women speak as part of catharsis. Women will talk about their husband. Sometimes they feel like leaving him. They're fed up of him. They're tired of him. But it's not that they are bad talking their spouses, but they get an opportunity for catharsis where they can ventilate, they can regroup, because they will talk and they will laugh and they will joke and they will share those experiences. But as men, we have not learned how to trust each other, even as believers. As men, we feel that if we are to expose ourselves, we have to deal with the whole issue of guilt and shame. And especially if you're dealing with the very personal issues. And I go back to two of the critical issues that I raised last week. If you, as an older male, and
You would have loved young, fleshy, bright, bushy-tailed female companions. As you start going down the hill, think about issues of mistrust and distrust and how that relationship could move to a very toxic one because I have to contend with a physiological change while my partner is climbing up the mountain. So there will be conflict in how that will be met. But on the other hand, it is because in our culture, we talk and we joke and we laugh at each other. So that how can I bring myself to be shamed publicly by somebody who should be providing me with some understanding and support? And what that could create, especially if I have a younger, vivacious, vibrant spouse, that could cause me to distrust even my very brethren in the church, because I may think that my wife may not be cheating on me, although I never before this would have had any reason to doubt her fidelity in the relationship. This is complex, Professor George, very complex.
Too much, too fast.
I realize.
One second, George. 1 second. Sorry about that, George. Just 1 second. You're listening to Men Talk on Isaac 98.1 FM, The Promise. And the Men Talk today is brought to you by Ayana Reflexology Health and Wellness. We take a short break and come back with George.
Hey, David, what you now, boy? How you looking sprightly so? Just the other day you complaining to me about back pain, chest pain, your foot swell up, circulation, all kind of thing. What you take for that, boy?
Jamal boy, I went by the feet lady, and not just me. I carry the family too. Boy, the family I straight arthritis, kidney problem, diabetes, circulation, acid reflux. You call all of them just now. I had a pinch nerve too, and a cousin with lupus. And boy, the feet lady help you with all of that. And Naya Tony boy, she's no joke. She even helping you if you had a stroke. Call she today, boy. Don't make joke.
Call Anaya Tony, the feet lady of reflexology, today at 478-7416.
Back on track with you. This is Men Talk on Isaac 90.1 FM. Before we went for the break, George was about to make a point. George, you can go ahead.
Yes, actually, I was so thankful to be a part of this conversation because, Doc, I'm 43 right now, and so this rings so significant because, yes, having had experience a debilitating situation in my medical history just recently, it brought me to this where I started to reflect upon my worth as a man, the things that I've done before. Have I gotten to where I need to go? And all of these thoughts started creeping up. And now I understand why, and what I wanted to add to what you said, Doc, is within our culture, within our society, it is socialized into us as little boys that big boys don't cry, that expressing how we feel and going to someone to share the problems that we're having is taboo. It is something that is completely forbidden for us to do as men. We are supposed to be the fixers. We are supposed to be the ones who handle the problems on our own. And so we find ourselves in situations that are beyond our means, yet we are put in a place where we are able to actually ask for help, because we've been trained not to. And time again, I've come to realize where it is definitely to our detriment, that we find ourselves caught in this loop. So, it is really refreshing to hear this conversation, to be able to have this conversation. And I truly hope that it does help a number of people, a number of men out there who find it difficult to come to the forefront and say, hey, I have a problem.
Thank you, George. Thank you so much. Doc, I want to find out from you. I remember last week Let me see. I'm trying to do two things at the same time. I remember last week, Doc, one of the things that you were saying, I don't know if you were talking about someone that you knew, or something like that, but you said there are some men, some woman was saying, he can't even, how did you put it? He's not able, he's not ready, he's not able, right? And yet he interfering with me. No, so why do we do that still? Because there are some men we see they want younger, they leave the wife for a younger girl, or they have an affair with someone who is so much junior. But yet this issue that they're going through manifests itself, as you said, in the fact that they're not able to perform sexually. So why put yourself through that?
Well, I guess it comes back to understanding the psychology of sexuality. Let's face it, nobody has to know if a woman is aroused or not. She could just lie there as a piece of log. She could be burning up like an incinerator, and she doesn't have to do a thing. She could just lie there. But could any man who is not on fire cause any heat? No.
And that's the point.
But in understanding the psychology of sexuality, there are some men who have no problems, even though they know that they will not be able to sustain and maintain an erection, which is what we call impotence, right? So that while some men can have an erection, that erection may not be sustained. And this is where the concept of impotence comes in. So it doesn't mean that you will never get an erection if you're impotent, as long as you cannot sustain it. So what some men are comfortable doing, they have no problems then to find themselves being very imaginative in how they treat with sexual encounters. So just having somebody hold that flaccid penis gives them a sense of power, because they are still in their minds experiencing a heightened sexual experience. Yeah, because remember, some of these younger persons are coming month end for the pension money. And that guy has no problems. I mean, this is reality. I've worked in HIV, so I understand this issue. So here it is. Those youngers will do all kinds of fancy things, and he gets his natural movie. So for him, he may have had enough coitus to satisfy him, but he can still have sexual experiences without coitus. So in his mind, his sense of being a man is still there, because some of them not going to fight up anymore, because they will not want to embarrass themselves, but they want to feel good. So that and for some of them, it's just having the conversation to talk about what they used to do. Even it means lying and creating visual images. Some of them do that, but they do that because as men, there is an expectation that no matter how old you are, you can still put on a work. And I'm using the colloquial language because this is how we as a society have created monsters of some of our men who fail to appreciate that they are still whole, even if they're impotent.
He's a friend to the friendless.
The 6:58, folks, we want to open up the lines a little earlier today to give you an opportunity to call and ask your question, make your comments. So we open the lines now. The numbers are 622-1981 and 628-1981. I'm still not sure if both lines are working. So 628, Understand. 628-1981. That's the number that you can call. 628-1981. Remember, the calls are for men only. It's Men Talk on this station, Isaac 90.1 FM. So if you're a man, a male, you've been listening to the program, you have a question for Doc or you have a comment to make, or even if you disagree with something that has been said, feel free to give us a call. 628-1981. Ladies, if you have a comment or question, please WhatsApp us at 275-1981. You have a call on the line. Let's take this call. Hello, good evening. You're on the air.
And pleasant good evening to you, Doctor.
Good evening.
And Dr. Ocho, good night.
Hi, good evening, sir.
And George, good night.
Yeah, good night, good night.
Well, of course, you know my voice. I haven't been with you guys for a long, long time.
A long time. You deserted us all through COVID.
Absolutely.
No, I didn't desert it. You know, it's just, well, don't let me go into all the circumstances, but you know that I haven't deserted you. You know that.
Yes,
if George doesn't know it, you know that. But as usual, Dr. Ocho is always very interesting, very knowledgeable man, very, very articulate in the way he puts things over, very down to earth. And yes, he speaks to the audience out here. I wasn't around last week, but what I've gotten tonight, I don't know if my comment will be appropriate. There's also the scenario based on the fact, and I'm sure, Dr. Noel, you may have encountered men in situations like these. Oh, I see them all the time, at least one or two every week, where in cases like what you describe, a man is facing this normal human experience of his life at whatever age. If he doesn't have the right wife by his side, he has trouble. Because a man could be extremely humiliated in that area when his wife calls him all kinds of names and tells him all sorts of things and makes the situation, compounds the situation and makes it worse for him. A wife can do that, and they can do it, trust me, they can do it good. So that's another problem. I'm going to leave it there because I'm sure there are other men who might bring in other issues. But that's another problem that our men right here in Trinidad face. Makes it worse.
Yeah.
He's facing a problem. He knows. She knows. But she simply beat him up, as we would say. Not physically, but verbally. And a woman can do that very, very good. I'm leaving it there, my brother.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you. Let me just say before you respond, Dr. Ocho, isn't that sometimes maybe a reflection of how the man has treated her, maybe throughout their life, so she now has an opportunity to get back at him, so to speak?
Well, not necessarily. It may be in some circumstances and situations, but it also occurs on the converse where she would have gotten enough. So it is time to move on. So I mean, this thing is very complex and convoluted. So remember, people would be attracted to people for different reasons. So some people become attracted to people because he has money. They are gold diggers. Let's face it, there are gold diggers out there who will bite their tongues, and they will face the ridicule and scorn, because at the end of the day, they have their goal to achieve certain things. And that same person now will tell the man, you're done dead already. Why you don't stop breathing? and understand the power of the voice that women have. Some women could speak in such suave, soft, and silent tones, where they could put their sentences and phrase them so well that it's better that woman had put a dagger and killed you right away. because the psychological scars that are created, some men may never be able to retake their position. So there are multiple factors why this may be so. And I dare say, some men walk straight into their trouble because they're fresh and fast.
4 minutes after 7 o'clock, let's take another call. Hello, good evening. You're on the air.
My goodness, Professor.
Go ahead.
Okay, I mean, laughing away when this doctor is like a real joker.
Are you fine, sir?
Put yourself together, man. Put yourself together.
I'm laughing away with this Dr. Ocho. You know, I went to school with Ocho, and I'm to be going in. You know, and he just reminded me of my friend. We were close, you know. He used to make jokes about him. This is a wonderful program, you know. I just love it. And especially the young ladies and the fellas and them with the pension, you know, and they just waiting to be over.
So,
wonderful program.
So you've been entertained.
Yes.
Very well, sir. Thank you for your contribution.
Yeah, okay. Good night. Bye-bye.
And Dr. Ocho, you know, you could give up your day job and probably going to accommodate, you know, according to this gentleman.
My day job has me extremely busy.
628-1981 is the number to call. 628-1981. Let's take another call. Hello, good evening. You're on the air.
Hello, Professor.
Yes.
First time caller. It's interested.
Welcome.
Yeah. I am 77 years. I'm married now 54 years. And right now I am still to get a room once every 2 weeks.
All right, you're breaking up a little bit. We move away from the radio, please.
Right. You hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Once every 2 weeks, at my age, I still get a little direction, and the time I get it, and my wife is hook up and we just laugh at each other. You know, we enjoy each other still up to this time. 54 years married, and we're going good, nice, strong and nice. So it's how your wife treat a man. Sometimes man get a wife and do. So it's how a woman treat a man and make him feel as a man. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution, sir.
Yeah.
It just reinforces what I said earlier, you know. It's very, very important. And I'm glad that you can still get your happiness better. Enjoy it. And that's why it's important that in relationships, we invest in memories.
It means that we have to make some memories, Doc. We have to make sure that
And that's why I talk about investing in it. And in order to invest, we have to take the time to ensure that when we are going over the hill and when the emptiness has come, we still have each other. And if it's just to talk about how life used to be, at least we would have the memories shared with each other.
Indeed, indeed. Folks, you're listening to Men Talk on 98.1 FM, The Promise. With me, Noel, Professor Richards, in studio, so not in studio. On the line is Dr. Oscar Ocho, our guest, and George as well. We're taking calls right now. Let's go to the phone line. Hello, good evening.
Yes, hello, good night.
All right, good evening to you.
Yes, hello, this is Dr. Ocho.
Hi, good evening.
Good night. Yes, I didn't hear the full method of what's going on. I just came in. But what about I know the topic go and it looked like it sounded like it was only for older men. But what if it's a young person and going through that situation? Is there any help as a young person, or that is it in that?
Great. Yes, and I guess what you are talking about, if it's a young person, we are talking a number of problems that a young person can have. A young person can have premature ejaculation as well as erectile dysfunction. And what happens in situations like that, very often that young person would have had some kind of emotional scar that would have impacted on their sense of self. And therefore, when it comes to sexuality, when it comes to sexual expression, there could either be hyperactivity to compensate for your sense of self that you would have lost, or there would come a case where there is a low libido because of sometimes you're dealing with shame and guilt and fear. In fact, I remember speaking to one of my colleagues who himself is a surgeon, and he was saying to me, there are so many men whom he's encountering with erectile dysfunction, but it has also been borne out in the literature. This has a lot to do with psychology than it has to do with biology. So if a young man is having these challenges, I would say the first port of call is seek professional help and pray.
And of course, Doc, when we talk about it, sometimes we don't talk about it even among ourselves because it's the shame and the, how people would look at us. And I think more often than not, sometimes if you talk about it, you'll find that there are other men experiencing the same thing as you. Somebody needs to be brave enough to start the conversation. Somebody needs to be brave enough to say, I'm experiencing this. And I would hope that even if somebody does that, that those who are in that circle would be brave enough to say, well, yeah, I'm going through this too, or I went through that too, rather than what we usually do. But you, boy, you don't look so, and that sort of thing. So I'm hoping that we men really rally around each other. And
you see, Professor and George, I think one of the big challenges that we face is that sex is something that we do, it's not something we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So when you come from that angle, anytime I could talk about not being able to do, then my sense of who I am as a man, I question that. So I experience what we call cognitive dissonance because it is me alone. And that's why we need to create spaces and environments like these, where we could speak not only anonymously, but we could speak in a non-threatening manner of such a sensitive issue, on such a sensitive issue, but with such relaxation. Because we need men to know that it's macho to reach out for help.
Yes. Someone sent this text message. Well, before we get into that, let's take a call on the line. Hello, good evening. You are on the air.
Professor, good evening.
Good evening.
Dr. Ocho, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
And who's the other person?
And George is here too. George.
Good evening, Professor George. Here's my concern, but I'm a first-time caller to your program.
Welcome, sir.
But thank you very much. Here's my concern. I don't know if you can address this for me. No, I'm not talking about me per se, but I have my wife, but I realize that I'm not having any kind of sexual urges with my wife. My wife may be a bit boisterous or whatever the case may be. And you may have spoken to them once, twice, 3 times about it, but you realize that you're not getting that kind of sexual urge with her, right? But then as you go, you may be some church sister or somebody else, all of a sudden you find yourself being around them. As you're around them, you realize that those urges are coming, so you recognize that you are not really dead or impotent. How do you address and deal with that?
Thank you for the question.
Such an important question that you have raised, and again comes back to the psychology of sexuality. So what has happened within the context of that primary relationship? They are growing out of love. You see, one of the big issues that a lot of us don't contend with is, or are challenged with, is intellectual intimacy. So when we talk about intellectual intimacy, if I cannot speak with you, if when we are in a conversation, I feel as though it is a dog and a lion fighting. Now, at the end of the day, I know if I know I can win the fight with the lion, I go my way. And what happens is that we begin to withdraw ourselves emotionally. And anytime a relationship changes at the physical level, it would have already changed at the emotional level. And therefore, what has to happen is if the couple cannot sit together to talk about how they feel, you have to now deal with the feelings level, then that will require professional help. And I stress professional help because sometimes it needs more than a spiritual leader, because you have to deal with some of the baggage that were never brought to the fore, which is causing that. And if this person is not careful, he could find himself asking Jesus excuse because he may see somebody and that penis could stand as the rock of Gibraltar that he'll want a place to park. Yeah? So you need to be careful.
Yeah. Thank you, Doc. 7:16, we still have a few more minutes to take a call. This WhatsApp message says, a couple of months ago, I found out my husband has an 8-year-old child. Now he's 68 and I'm 60. At first when I found out, I was hurt, then scorned. Now I don't care. Now is the time for you to relax yourself. You have to buy school books. We have grandchildren older than the child. I feel sorry for him, but that's his trouble. I'm heading for holidays early next year. Interesting.
The reality is again, people, I hope that we have not trivialized this issue.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that by the kinds of calls we are getting, Professor and George, it is just cementing how all-pervasive and challenging. And I want to say that this is a period where we have to be careful with our soul salvation, because bitterness, anger, and unforgiveness could become part of our daily diet.
Yeah.
That we have to contend with, because we could become so upset that you could move to the stage now where you find yourself almost robotic, going through the motions because you are hurting, and you reach the stage you don't care how anybody else feels.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, we have another one. I think you would have answered this already, but I'll ask it anyway. They put it this way. Why do some men get center soft at 50, 55? I've never heard that expression before. I didn't realize that was an expression. Center soft.
Well, I never heard of the expression center soft, but I would take that to mean erectile dysfunction. And again, there are a number of different reasons. What is the person's medical history? Is the person diabetic? You know, a person with diabetes will have changes in the blood vessels, vascular changes, the laying down of the plaques, damaging the smaller blood vessels, affect circulation, impotence is going to result. Is the person hypertensive? There are some hypertensive drugs that the person will take that will cause impotence. So they may have to contend with, do I keep my blood pressure under control, or do I allow engorgement of my penis with blood so I could put on a walk and I may get a heart attack and die on duty? Those are some of the challenges that he may have to contend with. But you also have to contend with what's the psychological environment within the context of that home. So it may be biological,
yes,
but it may also be psychological.
Yes, indeed. A gentleman. Folks, you can still call us. We still have a few more minutes. 628-1981, 628-1981. This one says, hi, good night. Well, he gives his name. He said, I'm 50 years of age and I have no desire for sex. I feel nothing at all. But even if I'm not having an erection, it doesn't mean the end of the world. So that's the way he looks at it. Should someone say that? Should someone say that, Doc? Should someone say, well, look, it's not the end of the world, so that's all right? Or should they be concerned enough to find out why they have no desire, why they're not getting an erection?
Well, I guess it all depends on what that person's psychosocial space is like. Because if I'm 50 and I'm celibate and single, then it's not a problem. But if I'm 50 but I'm looking for a mate, then that may be some cause for concern. So it all depends on what stage and whether I'm in a relationship or not. And if, so some people are quite comfortable, but it all depends on what is going on in the biopsychosocial space of that individual.
Folks, you're listening to Men Talk on Isaac 90.1 FM, courtesy Ayana Reflexology Health and Wellness Clinic. And we have just a couple more minutes to take a question.
If there are no calls at the moment, can I return to a question from last week? Because I went and I did some further research.
Sure.
And one of the questions that was asked focused on, is there a relationship between ejaculation and prostate cancer?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I had indicated I had not read. So I went and I did some work on Google Scholar, and there have been a number of studies that have been done looking at a summary of studies that focus on frequency of masturbation and risk of prostate cancer, the whole issue of frequency of ejaculation as it relates to coitus and prostate cancer. And while some studies have been able to say that there is a link between frequency in that as you grow older, the more sexual encounters, if you have more than 21 ejaculations for the month, then you are at a reduced risk for prostate cancer. However, some of those very studies indicated that you would have had to have low risk factors for other cancer-related factors. The one which looked at a summary of studies and masturbation indicated that there was no common theme and there were lots of concerns with the methodological rigor, while there are other studies which showed that men who have sex with men, because of the increased throbbing against the prostate gland, are at an increased risk for prostate cancer. So the long and short answer is that there have been a variety of studies. The findings are only suggestive. They are not conclusive.
Thank you so much. I think, though, that some married men would want you to repeat that first part at about 21 times a month, at least, will put them at a low risk of prostate cancer. And I guess they would be hoping that their wives are listening at this time, too, Doc. So, ladies, take note. Ladies, take note.
I will not expose myself to such trouble.
7:23 and a half, folks. We just have a few more minutes to take your calls or take your WhatsApp messages. So call us now. Don't wait until Dr. Ocho is gone and then ask the question. Someone asked from what age is midlife crisis?
And there's no specific age, but usually it occurs around the middle 40s to about the middle 50s, because that's a critical turning point in one's life and life experiences.
Okay. Someone says, just last night my mom was telling me she told my dad how dead he is, and that is because of how he treated her throughout the years. Now she has the opportunity to hit under the belt after 50 years of marriage.
Oh, and that is so traumatic.
Yeah.
So traumatic, because what if he comes alive one day? You could see rape, eh?
Indeed. Someone said my husband experienced erectile dysfunction early in our marriage, and he blamed me as being unfaithful. It caused our marriage. Well, it's not finished. I don't know what happened to the other thing, but I get the impression it caused a problem in the marriage. So he blamed her for his inability to have an erection, I guess.
And you see, it comes back to the issues I raised, the whole issue of distrust. So you see where it went? From my problem to you caused the problem because you went out there. Because we can't, as men, we have not been taught the importance of looking at the man in the mirror.
Indeed. Another one says, good night to the learned gentleman. 12 years of marriage and knowing each other for over 40 years, but the relationship is on the rocks because my husband has problems, but not sexual, and he's not verbalizing. He's 60 years old. And that's another issue with men, and that's why we have this program, so that men would be encouraged to talk. And, you can't do anything if he's not talking. Another one says, good night to the gentleman, nice show. First time I hear this kind of discussion. I'm a 57-year-old single woman. If I have to marry, I want a husband that is not impotent. Well, I would hope so. Yeah. Well, yeah. That makes sense.
Joy, of course.
Another, this is a gentleman. He says, I do have a wife. This is the one who says he's 50 years old and has no desire for sex. He says, I do have a wife, but she shows me no affection, so that is why I lost desire.
It's psychological.
We can't run away from it. Now, does he desire her? Because chances are he may have already divorced himself mentally, but maybe staying for different reasons.
Yeah, indeed. Another one asks, how can I get help if I have ED at 55?
Well, see your urologist. Go to a specialist. Do not go to a general practitioner, because you can be given hormonal replacement therapy. You can get testosterone therapy, and the boy can be able to work again.
Indeed.
For some men, they can also have the penile pump inserted, so that they can have the penile pump, and when they're ready, they pump it up just like a blood pressure kit. It stands and it's able to stand at attention. He can be able to have a good time, and then when he's finished, nobody has to know it was a support system that was available for him.
Indeed. But I'm curious, we only have a couple more minutes. But the pump itself, it allows you to maintain that erection?
Yeah, because remember, when you are ready, it is not becoming erect naturally, but there is a bulb that you have to lock and insert your pressure. It's going to stay up, and the Diabetes Association is one of the agencies I know that work with their members, because we know that there's a high incidence of erectile dysfunction and diabetes.
All right. Someone says, my husband is in his late 50s and has erectile problems and always has a desire for sex. And that's the next thing, Doc. Is it that you can still have the desire even if you're not able to maintain an erection? Would you still have the desire for sex?
Because brother, when the brother sees the young lady, the mind's still working, because the mind is the center to everything that is happening. And he also is thinking about what it used to be like And he wants to still see himself as being able to conquer the world.
Thank you. We have one more. I'm just going to read it because we have to wrap up here. It says, I'm 54, my husband is 68, and he can't perform. He only wants to have oral sex. And that is the last one we're going to read. As we close off here today, I want to say a very big thank you to Dr. Oscar Ocho for sharing with us these last 2 weeks on Andropause, midlife crisis, and the associated issues with them. Doc, I'm going to give you, a minute to wrap up, make your final statements.
Professor and George, and to the listening audience, this is always a wonderful privilege for me to share on very sensitive issues, because it's my particular area of interest, research interests and otherwise. But I think as a church, as a religious community, we also have a serious responsibility, because there are lots of men out there who are hurting, who want to reach out for help, but who have never been empowered to think that reaching out for help is macho. Men, start making this difference. If you want help, reach out for help, but reach out for help with the right persons. Thank you all so much, and may God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Ocho. George, I'll give you a minute to just make a comment.
Oh, yes. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this session, Dr. Ocho. Thank you so much. You put so much insight into my life. Trinidad and Tobago, I love you. Men, remember, you need help. Do not be afraid to reach out. Love you, Trinidad and Tobago. Have a beautiful Monday evening.
Thank you, George. Thank you, George. Thank you, George. Thank you, Dr. Ocho. God bless you both.
Father to the fatherless, physician to the broken and hurting. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician?
They say that men don't talk, but they are so wrong. Join me, Noel Professor Richards, and my co-host Huey Coffey every Monday at 6:30 p.m. for Men Talk. We talk about how to live, how to love, and how to lead. So join with us as we talk about everything that men talk about on Men Talk. Mondays 6:30 p.m. on Isaac 98.1 FM, The Promise.
You can now see the Men Talk team live on Facebook at Isaac the Promise and YouTube on FBN TV. Sponsored by Dr. Anaya Tony, the Feet Lady at Anaya Health and Wellness Center. Call 360-5166 or 478-7416.
Hey, David, what you now boy, how you looking spritey so? Just the other day you complaining to me about back pain, chest pain, your foot swell up, circulation, all kind of thing. What you take for that, boy?
Jamal, boy, I went by the Feet Lady, and not just me, I carry the family too. Boy, the family history, arthritis, kidney problem, diabetes, circulation, acid reflux. You call all of them just now. I had a pinched nerve too, and a cousin with lupus. And boy, the Feet Lady help you with all of that. And Naya Tony, boy, she's no joke. She even helping you if you had a stroke. Call she today, boy. Don't make joke.
Call Anaya Tony, the Feet Lady of Reflexology today at 478-7416.
Music for